turn it loud. Miami's pride, make us proud. CanesWear crew, you hear the crowd. Hurricanes ain't backing down. Every play, every score, raising bets and raising roar. Rocking orange, green galore. All for one and one for four. We got FTSN, taking names, win it again. Podcast fam, till the end. Tune in, now let's begin.
I've been waiting your entire life for the next. Think about all the sacrifices your mama and daddy made to get your peoples at the crib. Think about all that hard work you did when you was a little boy, when you was in high school, and nobody believed you could be in this spot. All them damn lifting them damn weights, all them damn sprints, getting up 5:30, 6 o'clock every damn morning to playing a game like this. Think about that. Remember what we talked about, right? We gotta come together with a closed fist and be clutch and be committed and be confident and be courageous and wait like they fast. One play at a time. Together with your brother for life. If it means my life, so be it. Y'all feel me on that? So one play at a time, one quarter at a time, one moment at a time. Together, you close your fist and you lean into that money. You lean into it. Together, you're supposed to be the A, be the A. You're supposed to be the buttercup, be the cut. You're supposed to be the half, be the half. And you're supposed to straight from inside out. Straight that shit, get that shit, and we eat that up.
Hey, all week we said this get back. We're not playing like that shit. We gotta pick our shit up, both sides of the ball, go whoop their ass, bro. We at home. We gotta beat their ass, bro. We restoring order back in this state. We run this. Let's go.
All recruits in-state, out-of-state can now clearly see the trajectory of this program versus the trajectory of the other programs.
And that is what I'm talking about, folks. 2 years ago in this stadium at Hard Rock, we lost 40, got blown out at home. And Mario said, one day the shoe will be on the other foot. And God damn it, was it not this past weekend at the Hard Rock Stadium. We win 36-14. Our Miami Hurricanes once again prove that we claim the state of Florida this year. Man, I don't know about y'all, but that video got me hyped. I was hyped before the game. I was hyped after the game. Anyone that got to see me at the game tailgating, we'll get into it very shortly, man. But what a great weekend. Another win under our belts. Miami Hurricanes continue to be undefeated, now ranked number 5 in the nation, continue to climb. Speaking of climb, we know this Florida State team doesn't know how to climb after the last couple of years. But yes, I am your host, Brad Tejeda. This is the CanesWear Daily Podcast, only on FTSN. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We got a loaded week ahead of us. Not only are we going to be talking about the FSU weekend recap today's show with me, your host, Brad, but we got a loaded show this week. We're going to be having our live show that we normally do every Tuesday night at 9:00 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night with me, Brett, our guys, Cliff and Mondo, who I got to kick it with and at the tailgate, have some drinks, have some fun. Man, what an awesome game. Awesome game to be at, awesome tailgate. Nothing but great Cane fans and family I got to chop it up with, man. But yeah, we got the CanesWear live podcast tomorrow at 9:00 Eastern. And then later on in the week, we're going to have some great special guests. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We're going to have John Michaels on with us. We're going to have Coach Balin Trujillo and 2026 quarterback Darion Coleman, who were both at the Miami First Florida State game this past weekend. We'll chop it up with them, see how they liked the atmosphere, and also talk a little bit about 2026 recruitment board, who we're trying to get, and obviously Darion's upcoming game this weekend. And of course, last but not least, as y'all know, we got another opponent this weekend, 12:00 Eastern time at the Rock against the Duke Blue Devils and Manny Diaz's football team. So you know we're going to have to break down the Duke football team with none other than Scott Medlin of the Duke Football Talk. So we're going to have him on as well this week. So again, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We got a loaded show this week. But yeah, man, going back to obviously this game this past weekend, anyone that was able to go to the football game like myself. It was a pleasure of seeing a lot of you. If you had the opportunity and time to stop by CanesWear, the flagship of this podcast, and our guy Brett, I was there from Saturday game day from about 8:30 in the morning to probably about 12 o'clock noon time. So if you got a chance to go by the store, you probably saw your boy working the door, man. I was helping out the store, chop it up, and see a lot of great Cane fans, man. I even saw some Florida State fans go in there and buy some merch as well, man. So, hey, we might have flipped a couple of Florida State fans, not just recruits, right, this past weekend. But awesome to see, the family over at CanesWear, Brett and the people over there. Awesome time. Great merch. As y'all know, they got all the Cam Ward jerseys, whether it's men, women, and kids, and all the orange out merch that you can get from this past weekend, man. The stuff was flying off the shelves, man. There was probably 50 people in line, steady for 4 or 5 hours, man. So shout out to the CanesWear team over there for doing great things for this Canes fan base. And then, yeah, man, made my way over from CanesWear with my boy Jonathan Campos. If you're watching this, man, shout out to you, bro. You always are a great friend, great fan of the Canes, man, and always hook your boy up whenever we link up to these away and home games, man. So shout out to you. We made our way over to the blue lot and kicked it with a bunch of great fans, man. We got to kick it with the X from Caneville, our boy Kappa Kane as well, who does amazing photography on the sidelines, man. We hung out with those boys. We even made our way a couple aisles over and got to kick it with our boy John Michaels, Armando, Cliff. You guys know the gang, and even Zach Krantz, man. Shout out to Zach Krantz as well, man. Krantz Corner, him and Spencer Knows always got great shows over there on their YouTube channel, man. Got to see Zach as well, man. Awesome time. And hey, we got to eat and drink and chop it up with some former Canes legends, man. We'll talk about that shortly. Clinton Portis, Edrin James stopped by the tailgate on Saturday, man. So we'll talk a little bit about what me and Clinton got to chop it up for about 10, 15 minutes and some insight on his son, Camden Portis, who obviously just committed in the last 24, 48 hours. So shout out to Clinton, Camden, and the whole Portis family. But let's get into this football game, right? 36-14, our Miami Hurricanes take care of business once again, and we are now 8-0, 4-0 in the conference, ranked number 5 in the nation, right? And hey, man, we have now stamped the state of Florida, took care of the University of Florida up in Gainesville, right here in my backyard, first game of the season. We took care of South Florida, right? We took care of Florida State. This is the state where you want to be, right? And we took care of FAMU as well. Can't forget about FAMU. But this is our state, man. I'm not one of those fans in particular that like to claim like the state titles. I'm more about ACC national championship. I like getting things that mean a little bit more. But obviously, when it comes to recruiting and just the season we're having, you got to take each week and each accomplishments as they go, man. So big time achievement, accomplishment for this football team. Shout out to the staff, the players, man, for really just putting on another showcase performance. We didn't have the best performance on offense as far as throwing the ball in the air. We'll break that down shortly. But hey, what a great outcome for this fan base too, right? We knew all week the hashtag was pack the rock. And man, it was all orange in that stadium, man. There were 67,000 plus. Those first couple series, man, it felt like Notre Dame, Virginia Tech days back in 2017, man. It was electric, great time. And like I said, the tailgating was one top tier tailgates, man. You guys know if you've had the experience of going to a Miami Hole game, there's nothing like Miami Hurricane tailgate, man. So shout out to all the fans and people I got to see and chop it up with this past weekend, man. But yes, Miami offense, right? When you listen to the Florida State fan base, to the media, they got their head down, right? They're ashamed of the performance that they had. They knew going into this game that they didn't really have a shot. When you look at the bookies and the spread going into this game, it was 21.5 for a reason, right? We covered the spread, 36-14. So we take care of business both ways, not only getting the W, but covering the spread for all you betting and parlay guys out there and girls. But when you talk to this Florida State fan base after the game, You want to talk about moral victories, folks. I know the Florida fan base is another fan base in particular that loves the moral victories, being third or fourth best in the SEC East every year and cheering for SEC teams after their season's already over. But Florida State, has to chime in the moral victory seasons with the season that they're having, right? They are hanging their hat, folks, on the fact that this was Cam Ward's worst performance this season in a Miami Hurricane uniform. And you know what? It may have just be, right? When you look at the stats, our guy Cam Ward threw 22 of 35 passes, 62% completion rate, still pretty good, but only had 208 passing yards with 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Was the first time all season that he threw for under 300 yards and didn't have a passing touchdown. So kudos to the Florida State Seminoles for doing one great achievement this year. Let's give it up for the Florida State Seminoles. You guys, man, let me tell you what, that one achievement that you guys are hanging on, you guys still got the L, are now 1-7. And while Miami is looking at ACC championship bound, trying to figure out what bowl they're going to, the Florida State Seminoles, folks, are pretty much bowl ineligible after the loss to the University of Miami Hurricanes. We pretty much ruined their season if it wasn't already ruined. And unfortunately, folks, the closest thing that Florida State players will have to getting close to a bowl this year is a Chipotle food line. So unless these guys want to smell a bowl, go to Chipotle, get your nearest chicken bowl, rice bowl, however you want to do it. I know Julian Armella and all these other guys, they're going to need plenty of food with the ways they've been sitting on the bench and on the couch, man. So go and get you a bowl since you're not going to be seeing a bowl this upcoming year. But going back to our Miami Hurricanes, we saw the achievement, we heard of the achievement that Florida State is knocking their hat on. But I want to talk about this Miami Hurricane offense from a statistical standpoint, guys. I want y'all to understand, we may have not had the prettiest game in the air, the glamour, the ritz, the nice plays that we're used to seeing a Cam Ward in this wide receiving group, but we still got the job done. We did exactly what the task was at hand. I thought we were very vanilla in the game plan, which, hey, by all means, when you're playing an opponent like Florida State, you don't need the sprinkles, you don't need the gummy bears. You could keep it plain and sweet and still, as you can see, cover the spread and get the W, which is what Miami did. But this offense had a total of 8 drives the whole football game, and they scored on 7 out of 8 of those drives, right? I mean, what another huge accomplishment for this Miami Hurricanes football team, especially on the offensive side of the board. Even though we weren't as productive as we've been all year, we still are efficient and are executing when needed. When points need to be happening on the board, we continue to do that. So you like what you see from our Miami Hurricanes offense. And hey, man, want to give a shout out to Cam Ward. I talked about the small little achievement that Florida State is talking about after this loss to Miami of holding Cam Ward to his worst passing performance ever. But hey, guys, shout out to Cam Ward. My guy Cam Ward is a better wide receiver than Hakeem Williams of Florida State. Cam Ward has more receiving touchdowns than Hakeem Williams this football season. So, I mean, if you guys want to hang your hat on having Cam Ward's worst passing performance, you guys also need to look at the verse side, and maybe you guys should get some better wide receivers because our starting quarterback is already outperforming some of your wide receivers on the football team. So kudos to Cam Ward for that nice catch at the end of the football game, and Elijah Royal for the nice lefty pass, nice little tight spiral. Shout out to those boys. Now, like I said before, the passing game against Florida State was a little vanilla, but when you really look at the film and you watch this game very closely, you're going to look and see that Mike Norvell kind of knew going into this football game, this was going to be a very tough matchup and opportunity for him to even get out a W in Hard Rock. But the one thing he didn't want to do is get blown out, right? This team is already on their last fumes. When you look at this football season for Florida State, they don't really have much to play for. But if there was something that he wanted to make sure he didn't do going into this football game was to get blown out, similar to how they blew us out 2 years ago, 45-3. And the way they did that was They relied on their front four from the pass rush standpoint and their guys in the secondary who really do a good job at playing man. And essentially what you saw from Florida State's defense was they had a game plan going into this game where they played a lot of too high safety look and pretty much bracketed our slots in Xavier Strepo and Arroyo throughout the football game and really just tested us to run the football and just give Cam Ward anything short, 6-7 yard dump passes. And what we've seen in the past was that Cam Ward, at times likes to extend the plays, likes to, not necessarily make the checkdowns. But in the last couple of weeks, those checkdowns have really paid off in big time moments, whether it was a checkdown play or him tucking and running. And he just continued to show and do that this football game against Florida State this past weekend. Like I said before, his average yard throwing this past weekend, I believe, was right under 6 yards a throw, which is very uncommon for Cam Ward. But like I said before, with the defense and the look that Florida State was giving our offense, it was pretty clear going into this football game from an offensive game plan of Miami and Shannon Dawson. I just spoke on the front four for Florida State and what they do as far from a passing standpoint, but from a running standpoint, they were really abysmal going into this football game before the matchup. So I think the game plan for Miami already before, the ball was even snapped was to run the football a lot this game. And what you saw with our two running backs, let's just go right off the bat, right? Shout out and prayers again and condolences to Mark Fletcher Jr. and the Fletcher family. This young man just battling adversity, just 48 hours, 72 hours before this football game. As y'all know, his father passed away unexpectedly, and the young man still strapped up, still followed the task at hand. And this football team, this fan base, and his teammates and coaches rallied around this young man. And we were all behind him. And if you saw me on social media along with others who got the opportunity of filming and watching that first drive, that first touchdown for Miami, where Mark Fletcher scores the first touchdown off a run for the Miami Hurricanes to go up 6-0. It was very hard to not watch that play and not shed a tear, get your eyes watering, man. So kudos and big ups to Mark Fletcher and his family, man. I'm really praying and condolences as well, man. As y'all know, this Miami Hurricane fan base, we don't take the word family lightly. So heavy hearts and condolences to Mark Fletcher Jr. and the family. But man, way to just fight through adversity, like I said, and do what you do best, man, and playing football and just putting on for your father, man. Having the same name as him, you're going to be leaving on a great legacy, and I know he would be proud with the performance you had this past weekend. Our guy, Mark Fletcher, had 15 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown, like I just mentioned. And, hey, man, we got the yin and yang, the 1-2 punch in this running back carousel for the Miami Hurricanes, right? We've been clamoring Davey Martinez, after the first few weeks after that Florida game. He really fell off a few games from a statistical production standpoint. And then these last few games, man, not only Davey Martinez, but I think Sam Brown and Isaiah Horton, those three guys on the offensive side of the ball, have really just continued to progress. And you're seeing, the quality depth that this team has. And if we're going to be making a run to the ACC championship and hopefully to the playoffs this year, we're going to need all these guys to contribute. And our guy, Damian Martinez, again, another running back, 15 carries, 148 yards and 2 touchdowns for Damian Martinez. The dude was averaging 10 yards a carry, and 107 of those 148 yards came after contact. You talk about the bruiser mentality of a guy like Damian Martinez. He's got that Marshawn Lynch type of running style to him, man. And it's exciting to watch someone like Damian Martinez in that third, fourth quarter really just go through blocks and just run people over. And just the move he made on that safety Thomas in the open field, man. The guy's got wiggle. He can run you over. Just a great running back room right now for the Miami Hurricanes, man. We are starting to look like a really balanced football team. I think before this game, it was pretty obvious, right? You had to stop Cam Ward. Find a way for this guy not to throw for 3 tutties and 300 plus yards, right? And maybe you have a chance of getting in this football game. Well, guess what? Florida State had that game plan going into this. They had the pass rush. They had the secondary to try to contain this team. And we saw that, hey, man, we'll take what the defense gives us and we'll just run the football. And if you want to stop the pass, you can't stop the run. If you want to stop the run, you can't stop the pass. So far this year, folks, there's not a team in the country that's been able to line up against Miami and stop both the run and the pass. So kudos to this offense, Shannon Dawson, and all the boys on the offense side of the football for really doing their thing. I touched on the quarterback and running backs, but the wide receivers too, man. Like I mentioned before, they weren't not that they were capable, but again, like I said, the defense really put a bracket in shells. That too high safety shell look really made it to where we couldn't have any deep passes throughout the football game. But guys like Isaiah Horton and Sam Brown, when we needed tough catches, those 4 or 5 yard plays, when we needed that 3rd or 4th down conversion, you saw guys like Isaiah Horton and Sam Brown really step up. From a statistical standpoint, box score doesn't look too pretty, nothing too crazy. Nobody really stands out. But when you really watch the film, and of course you go through the progress of the season, those were 2 guys in particular that we wanted to see a lot more from this year. And I think those 2 guys really did their thing this football game while they were, keying in on guys like Elijah Arroyo and Xavier Restrepo. So, Isaiah Horton, Sam Brown continue to progress. And like I said before, man, this offense has many weapons, not just passing the ball, but running the ball. So I like where we are with the offense of Miami. Could have been better, absolutely. But I think at this point, Miami fans are nitpicking. You got to understand the game of football and realize kind of what the game plan was going into this football game. And hey, they were successful at what they were trying to do going into this Florida State game. So you can't knock them for that. Now, switching over to the opposite side of the football, when you look at our defense of Miami, Florida State had 248 total yards of offense, rushing and passing. So from a statistical and box score standpoint, I think our defense definitely improved from the last few weeks. There wasn't too many big plays that we gave up against this Florida State team, but we also knew going into this game that there weren't too many playmakers or guys on this offense that would really test our defense, right? But if you had to nitpick and kind of just look from a defensive standpoint of where we can still get better, because there is still a lot of ways for improvement for this defense of Miami, is you got to look at the quarterback for Florida State. And Luke, this was a guy that going into this game, you weren't scared of his arm, you weren't scared of his legs. And I really thought that Lance Guidry and his defense were going to pressure and bring a lot more blitz situations to the table. Because someone like Luke, I really felt like the more pressure that you put on him, the more he's going to crumble and make very risky mistakes. But what we saw was when the pocket collapsed, Luke actually ran the ball very efficiently. And one thing that I've noticed with this defense is if you have a mobile quarterback that isn't afraid to run the ball, prime examples is USF quarterback Brian Brown and, of course, Virginia Tech quarterback Jones. Those were 2 quarterbacks in particular that were more mobile quarterbacks. And when they needed to run the ball, they did just that. Our linebackers, our secondary, for some reason, when they're in space against these quarterbacks that have just any type of wiggle, they can't seem to bring guys down. And then our defensive line create a lot of pressure, create a lot of havoc, but it just seems like we're not getting those sacks. Still a lot of missed opportunities and missed tackles. It just seemed like Luke was slippery all night, right? The guy had baby oil or something. I think he was sponsored by Diddy before the game, because we couldn't tackle Luke to save our lives. And this was a guy that's not very athletic. And just moving forward, I mean, obviously we'll talk about the Duke matchup later on in the week. But when you look at this Duke team, they got a quarterback as well at Duke that isn't going to scare you too much passing the ball, is very capable of running the football, though. Very similar to Kyron Jones and Byron Brown from USF. So this is going to be, again, another week that is going to test our defense with a mobile quarterback. So I think this is going to be something that we are going to have to fix going into this Duke matchup, because this is a team that I don't think is really going to stretch the field from a passing standpoint. They do have capability of doing so when the plays come to fruition. They do a good job at scheming things up and calling plays at the right time. But all in all, this is more of a rushing attack offense for Duke. So I think Miami is going to have to key in on playing a little bit better QB spy. I want to play a lot more zone than man. I don't know what's going on, but it seems like we're relying a lot more on the man than zone coverage, and it seems to be hurting us a lot. So I want to see more zone, less man, a lot more blitzing in certain scenarios. And like I said before, going to this Duke matchup, which we'll break down later in the week, going to have to QB spy that Duke quarterback and obviously contain the rushing attack for Duke. But from a wide receiver standpoint, running back standpoint, besides Luke, this defense pretty much shut everyone else down. Guys like OJ, Frederic, Jaden Richard really stepped up, played very well, in my opinion. But there were some guys that just continue, for some reason, regress. Kiko Mainoa, for example, is a guy that I was expecting a lot more from this year, and it seems like he's a guy on this defense that every week there's been a few plays where you're kind of just shaking your head, and it's ends up costing us, a big 15, 20-yard play at least. Anytime Kiko gets broken down into that middle of the field where it's kind of one-on-one with either the running back or the quarterback or missed assignments. And of course, De'Ani Hill as well, for some reason, is still having some issues at times. So those are two in particular guys that I want to step up on this defense going into this Duke football game. But like I said, all in all, holding a offense to under 250 total yards, I mean, you got to be pleased with the performance. Can this defense get better? Absolutely. There's always room for improvement. But when you look at other teams and other defenses around the country, I think this team, all in all, offense, defense, and special teams, we're in pretty good shape, and there's a reason why we are ranked currently number 5 in the country going into this Duke matchup. Manny first Mario. Now, as y'all know, this will be a big-time matchup against Duke, probably the best defense Miami will face all year besides probably Florida. It's probably a toss-up between the two. So yet again, this is going to be a Super Bowl type of mentality matchup for the Duke Blue Devils. They're playing for a lot. They're playing to stay in the race for the ACC. And of course, Manny is playing for pride, to kind of show the people that, hey, man, all the bashing and not believing in me, after going to Penn State and now being the head coach at Duke, he is going to do everything he can to try to get that W against Mario and these Miami Hurricanes at noon in Hard Rock Stadium. So if you have the capability to go to that football game, please make sure you show up, show out, so we create that hostile home field advantage and atmosphere that we just did this past weekend, man. Because if you did have the pleasure of being in Hard Rock Stadium like myself, it was awesome. It was magical. And not only was the game magical, but the people, the fans, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, man, from all the fans I saw at CanesWear to all the fellas, ladies, and of course, former players that we got to kick it with, tailgating before the game. Mondo, Cliff, John, Carnell, Zach, Jazz, the list goes on and on. There were so many great people, so many people I got to spend time and chop it up with. And two legends came by the tailgate. We had Edrin James and Clinton Portis stop by for a little bit, and I got to chop it up with Clinton Portis for about 15 minutes. Me and him both being from Gainesville, Florida, or living in Gainesville, Florida, I should say, originally from Miami, at least me. But, we talked a little bit about the Gainesville high school football map and stature, kind of where high school football has taken shape the last few years with teams like Hawthorne, Newberry High School, and even Santa Fe really progressing from a high school football standpoint of getting a lot of these young men the opportunity and looks from D1 and D2 programs. But then we talked a little bit about the Miami Hurricanes football team, what he's been seeing this year. And then finally, man, we chopped it up and talked about his son Camden, who was also there. Man, got to see him in person. And this young man, even though he's a 2026 corner who just committed to Miami over the weekend from North Carolina, he is every bit of 6'2", man. He is already built to play college football right now, and he's still got another year and a half of high school to go before he comes to the University of Miami. I'm excited to see his progress. I mean, just the mentality that he brings from obviously his pops, Clinton. He kind of told me before the game even started, he's like, "Yeah, man, Camden's ready to make that move and be a Hurricane." So once I saw the bat signal out and the baby boy image from Coach Dennis Smith, man, it was kind of writing on the wall from there. But shout out to the Portis family and Camden for making the announcement official. So congratulations to you guys for now being officially Miami Hurricanes. And he wasn't the only commit and future commit, hopefully, for the University of Miami that made their way to Hard Rock Stadium. They had over 120 plus high school visitors for this game, probably the biggest turnout this season for Miami when it comes to a recruiting list. And some of the guys that had a lot of good info receiving back from this game. One in particular was 2026 quarterback Darion Coleman and his quarterback trainer, Coach Balin Trujillo, who we'll have later on this week on the show. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We'll be chopping up with both of them, their experience on the Florida State-Miami game, some of the other players that Darion wants to bring into this class for 2026, and obviously his upcoming opponent this weekend over at Jones High School. But we also had guys like Kellen Wiley and TJ Alford, two linebacker targets for the University of Miami, make their way to Coral Gables. Kellen Wiley, obviously from Armwood High School, is a guy that Miami's been targeting for quite a while. I believe they will be back for another home game for Miami, I believe against Duke, if I'm not mistaken. We continue to trend in the right direction for Kellen, who's 6'3", 200 plus pounds, got great range, great size. Being able to pair him with a guy like Gavin Nix, and obviously Ezekiel Marcelin from Miami Central as well. Pairing him with those two guys would be awesome. But there's also another linebacker in the mix, Vero Beach, TJ Alford, who's currently committed to Ohio State. Got to chop it up with one of his coaches again before the football game, and got a lot of good positive buzz with TJ Alford. And of course, after the game, hearing from other sources and recruits that got to talk to him, the TJ Alford buzz is definitely trending in the right direction for Miami to potentially flip as well. So that is another linebacker to look out for, TJ Alford out of Vero Beach. And other than those two guys, you also had Jarquez Carter, defensive lineman from Newberry High School, very close to my backyard out here in Gainesville High School, who's currently committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes as well. His teammate is Micah Newton, who is currently committed to the University of Miami. He has been in Jarquez's ear from the jump ever since he made that commitment to Ohio State. And every week that Miami lines up and plays football, Jarquez is watching our team. And we are a team that's trending in the right direction, again, for Jarquez Carter to possibly flip. So that is another name to watch out for between Micah Newton and being in his ear, myself, and a couple other people from Newberry that feel like staying in the state of Florida closer to family where they could have the opportunity of watching Saturday or very close to that is a big time thing that may sway Jarquez in favor of Miami, along with just the way Miami's been playing this season. So another guy that's just trending in the right direction for Miami right now with recruiting. There were a few names that didn't make their way to Miami this past weekend. You had big time targets, Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, and DJ Pickett not show up this past weekend. All in all, Miami's got two wide receivers currently committed on the board, in Dalen Upshaw and Joshua Moore. So I'm not too worried about that. We also did have Malachi Toney, recent decommit for Miami, at the game. Again, more great positive buzz and traction on that one. Wouldn't be surprised if Malachi Toney ends up back in this class. We'll see how that ends up. So all you Miami fans that have been bashing the young man or going on social media, you may want to delete those. because if not, your boy and a few others been bookmarking them, and we will definitely be calling you out on those. So make sure you follow the way this recruiting stuff works, man, because I think a lot of people just follow the subliminal stuff that you see on the timeline, and you don't really know the backstory of everything that's happening. So just be cautious of those little things, right? But other than that, man, I think recruiting buzz is obviously heating up, not only 2026, but I think 2025 guys, you may see one or two more guys commit within the next couple weeks for Miami. But yeah, man, Miami, Florida State breakdown, 36-14. Talk a little bit about recruiting. It was awesome to see all the Miami Hurricane fans this past weekend. And we got a big time matchup against the Duke Blue Devils this weekend, Saturday, Hard Rock Stadium, 12 o'clock Eastern time. And like I said at the beginning of the show, please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We got a loaded show this whole week, whether it's our boy John Michaels going to be chopping up not only about the Florida State game this past weekend, what we liked, what we didn't like, but also talk about the season outlook, how we've been progressing, and then leading up to the Duke game. We'll also have Scott Medlin of the Duke Football Talk break down this Miami-Duke matchup with us later on in the week. And like I mentioned before, we're going to have Coach Balin Trujillo, quarterback coach and trainer for Darion Coleman, 2026 quarterback. Both of those gentlemen will be joining us on the show later this week. So loaded show, only on the CanesWear Daily Podcast on FTSN. Please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. And never forget the hoodie, the hat, the sign, you see the top. CanesWear, best stop shop, only shop to shop all of your Miami Hurricanes fan wear apparel, whether it's Miami Hurricanes, Miami Dolphins, Miami Marlins, Florida Panthers, Inter Miami. They got it all. They get new merch pretty much every other day, if that. So please make sure you go to CanesWear.com for all of your needs. It's your boy Brad Tejeda. We'll see you tomorrow night. I'm out. Go Canes.